again. Sorry, I'm driving. Just ignore that. So real quick, I wanted to make a real quick Q&A video. So the question was, what is the difference between conscious and subconscious? So that's kind of easier to explain utilizing the principle of gender. So when you think about conscious and subconscious, you need to think about the principle of gender, and what gender really means is positive and negative, electric, magnetic, masculine, feminine, the duality energies, right? The primal forces of positivity and negativity creating vibration in general. So consciousness is the active masculine principle, and then subconscious is the potential feminine principle. And what that means is that when you are in your conscious state, that's where your will is focused. When you're in your subconscious state, that's where your will is potential dormant, I want to say. So like awake and asleep kind of don't really do it justice, okay? Consciousness is intended action and interaction. Consciousness is about interaction. And then subconscious is potential action or understanding. So understanding happens when you combine knowledge of experience and implementation, which is interaction, right? So you have a negative energy, which is absorbing the interaction, right? Or the reality, or whatever you're absorbing, whatever data you're absorbing, that's negative energy because you're pulling it in, right? And then what you do in response is positive energy. It's your reaction, it's your choice, your will, your action, right? Your chosen action. That's positive energy again. So then, so you've had a negative, and then you went to a positive, and then what? They go back down toward the negative, right? When you hit that spot in between positive and negative, like that very middle spot in between the highest point of the high and the lowest point of the low, that's your neutral territory. Neutrality is what resets, essentially. And then you go again, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. But then in between, you have that flip, right? So then that's kind of where you wake up. So if you're in your body, right, your physical body, physical realm, and you're awake in your physical body, in the physical realm, and you're walking around, you're interacting with shit, that's your consciousness. That's your conscious state, right? Your subconscious state is the opposite when you're dreaming, when you're walking around in your dreams doing whatever the fuck it is you do in your dreams. There's that in-between neutral spot, which you're kind of both. And that's when you're meditating, or when you're journaling, or when you're dancing, or whatever it is you're doing, whatever you do that puts you in touch with your creative higher spirit, your creative aspect, your muse. That's your in-between neutrality place. And that's where you can understand better. And anyway, the neutral area is what we call the unconscious, right? So you got conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. And the unconscious is the spirit, right? The silent observer that isn't interactive but observes, right? And then the consciousness is interactive. And then the subconscious is contemplative, right? So it processes and works out everything that the consciousness has experienced or, received, light information, whatever. So there's so many ways, that the ancients go through at explaining this, the sun and the moon, Adam and Eve, all of these equal opposite gendered symbols, all represent states of awareness, states of consciousness, essentially. So it's kind of like the human being is constantly dreaming. You're essentially constantly dreaming. You are dreaming in your physical body, and you're dreaming in your dream body, whatever. Doesn't matter which body you're in, you're still doing the exact same mental process. Whether you're waking or sleeping, you're still mentally doing the exact same thing, just in a different realm. And the physical realm, when you're awake, is slower. And, the astral realm, etheric realm, activated faster. And it's the switch between the two is that neutral point. But that neutral point is kind of a void, right? What happens when you find balance, right? Walter Russell tells us what happens when you find balance. The avoidance principle. There is a void that comes from balance. And it's not... It's not like anything disappears. It's a portal. A void is a portal. A black hole is essentially its own universe. If you were in the center of a black hole, you would have no idea, because it wouldn't look like a hole sucking anything up. It would just look like whatever's inside of it, right? And then everything's inside of it, right? Because nothing can come back out. Anyway, consciousness is in a constant state of dreaming, and it's whether you're dreaming in your conscious or your subconscious state. Your unconscious state is kind of like in the background all the time. Just like your subconscious is kind of always in the background of your waking state. And your consciousness is kind of in the background of your dreaming state. Kind of like that. The unconscious neutrality point is always in the background of both states. So consciousness in your waking state or your active state is interactive, right, with the world around you, the reality, the accepted reality around you. Part of that is that when you interact with the reality around you, you accept it as reality. If you interact with it at all, your brain has to accept it as reality. Not so much the only reality, but as a reality that you're, able to interact with. If the brain doesn't accept, mind doesn't accept that whatever you're interacting with is a reality that it's in, it starts to like malfunction, right? Like it's like lucid dreaming. That's what lucid dreaming is. And when that happens, you're not in any of the normal states. You're not in a dreaming state and you're not in an awake state. You're in kind of both, right? If you're lucid dreaming, it's because you realize there's something off or different about the reality that you're in, and it's not the one you were just in. It's not the one you just came from. We kind of forget how horrifying it is to wake up in a whole new world. Like 1 minute you were on a boat fishing, with your dead grandma, and everything was cool, and then you wake up and you're in bed, your alarm clock went off, and now you got to get up and go to work. Like, you just time traveled. I mean, you swapped one reality out for the next, and you accepted both equally. While you were there, you accepted them both equally. 100%. You knew you were holding that fishing pole. 100%. You knew you were talking to your grandma. 100%. You still knew she was dead. But you accepted that reality while you were dreaming and experienced it. And whatever you gained from that experience sticks with you in your waking state. Just not, not right fresh in the mind. But it's still there in your subconscious. Same thing with your, waking daily activity. You accept this reality as a real happening, right? You accept it as it's happening, as what's actually happening. And as soon as you accept that, it becomes your reality, and you interact with it. You can interact with it. If you couldn't accept it, you couldn't interact with it. Or the physics would be different off, you know what I mean? That's what I mean by lucid dreaming. Because once you realize you're dreaming, you can choose to stay there and fuck the dream up, or do whatever you want to do in the dream, because now you know you're dreaming. You know that dreaming means that this reality is only one of many, and that its physics are different than the one you were just in, and that you can manipulate them because it's your dream, right? You know these things in your subconscious state because you learned them in your conscious state. That information stays with you. Same way, vice versa. That's what deja vu is. Like, I had a dream about this, or I was here before, or whatever. So you're, in your subconscious experience, you may or may not have been there before. You may have jumped in and out of those time loops or whatever, but that information sticks with you when you wake up from that. So anyway, conscious versus subconscious halves of a whole, but initially 2 of 3 parts. Like, everything's a trinity always. Positive, negative, neutral. So yeah, there's a conscious active state, and then there's a subconscious dormant potential energy state, and then there's the unconscious, which is the underlying of both. I hope that answers your question.